Last week, we spoke about contraband in prison. We spoke about corrupt staff, civilian workers, visitors, prisoners, and the ridiculous arguments people have online when they want just one easy villain and one simple answer to the drug problem in prisons. But today, I need to talk to you about the route that completely changes the conversation. Because whilst everyone's arguing about who is bringing the drugs through the gate, organized crime is flying them over the wall directly to somebody's cell. Drones are being used to deliver drugs, phones, even weapons, and other contraband straight to prison windows and cells. And this is not some rare little incident here and there anymore. Government figures show there were 1,712 incidents concerning drones between England and Wales, between, I think it was April 2024 and March 2025. So when people say, how is all this stuff getting into prison? The answer is no longer just check who brought you through visit. Now, the questions should also be who is controlling the sky above the prison? And I don't know about you, but that scares me a little bit. Because prison security is not just about a gate anymore. It's not just about search area, drug dogs, or a member of staff who made a bad decision. It's literally organized crime looking at the prison estate and saying, where's your weakness? Where is that window? Where is your blind spot? Where is that landing that can be reached? Where is that prisoner who owes us money? Where is the prisoner who can distribute it? And which prison cannot physically stop us? And once you understand that, you stop seeing drones as some silly gadget just flying over a wall. You start seeing them for what they actually are. Basically, a delivery system for organized crime. That's why I've referred to it as Uber drugs, because that is basically how one of the judges described it as well. A gang was jailed after using drones to smuggle drugs, weapons, and phones into prison, and the judge compared it to prisoners getting items delivered as if by Uber Eats or Deliveroo. And I need people to really sit with that, because we're not talking about one little bag being thrown over a fence. We're talking about heavy drugs. We're talking about phones. We're talking about dangerous, genuine weapons delivered to order, as if you're Amazon delivery, to prisons, to specific people, to specific windows by other organized criminals. That is not chaos. It's business. And that is the part I think that people outside often miss, because contraband inside prison is not just somebody getting high, it's not just a bit of weed, boys will be boys. It's not just like, oh, well, they are in prison, so what would you expect? Drugs inside prisons are debt, bullying, violence, intimidation, families being pressured on the outside so it gets the community involved. They are prisoners getting battered because they owe money. They are prisoners ringing their mums, their partners, their sisters saying, you need to send money now or I'm in huge trouble. There are prisoners who are trying to stay clean, being dragged back into addiction. There are wings changing atmosphere overnight. There are officers walking into that landing and immediately feeling that something is off. And if you've ever worked in a prison, you know exactly what I mean. You walk onto a landing and you feel it. You feel the shift. You feel that people are too quiet or too loud. They might be a bit too alert, too interested where the staff are, or everyone suddenly wants to be near just one particular cell, or there is a smell. Someone is pacing. Someone is suddenly really paranoid when they haven't been before. Or someone who was absolutely fine yesterday is now in debt, terrified, high, aggressive, or completely unpredictable. And people online still want to talk about contraband like it's just some kind of minor discipline issue. It's not. It's a genuine safety issue. It's a public protection issue. It includes violence, mental health, organised crime. And in some prisons, it's now been described as a national security threat. The Chief Inspector of Prisons, Charlie Taylor, warned that drones are frequently bringing in drugs and weapons into high security prisons. including prisons like Long Lartin, holding some of the most dangerous men in the country, including terrorists and organised crime bosses. He said some prisons had effectively ceded the airspace to organised crime groups. Let that sink in. Ceded basically means given up control. So, in plain English, hear me say this: the criminals are controlling the sky above parts of the prison better than the prison themselves are. And that is not me being dramatic. That is the chief inspector of prisons telling you and warning you that the airspace above some of the highest security prisons has effectively just been surrendered to organised crime. And if that doesn't worry people, I generally don't know what will. Because when you hear high security prisons, most people imagine the most controlled, strict environment in the country. Huge walls, strict security, dangerous prisoners, everything locked down. But then you read about HMP Manchester, HMP Long Lartin, and suddenly the picture looks very different. Inspectors warned the drones were dropping drugs and weapons into those prisons. They warned that basic security measures like netting and CCTV had fallen into disrepair. At HMP Manchester, inspectors said the prisoners were literally burning holes in windows so drone deliveries could still get in. Supposedly secure windows, right? But just think about that. A prison window is meant to be secure. It's not just glass, it's thick plex. It's meant to be part of the physical barrier. But prisoners are literally burning holes in those windows, melting through them, so the drone packages could be received. So when people say, just search them, stop visits, sack corrupt staff, just be tougher, you are missing the scale of the problem. Because if a drone can fly straight to the window, and if the window itself has been compromised, you are not just dealing with one bad prisoner, you are dealing with organised crime exploiting a broken environment. That right there is the prisoner state itself, because this is where it gets even more ridiculous. There's been reports about attempting to stop drone drops, but they are hampered by weak and crumbling Victorian prison walls. Just imagine that. Some prisons are so old that putting up a stronger netting or grills is not simple. According to the reports, plans for stronger mesh were affected because the bricks themselves were already too soft to hold it properly under tension. So let's be very clear about what that means. We are trying to fight organised crime in 2026 with buildings from the 1800s. Modern drones, modern gangs, modern technology, modern communication, modern drug markets against old windows, old walls, broken netting, poor maintenance, staff shortages, overcrowding, and a prison estate that was literally not built for modern world. And then everyone sort of acts shocked when system cannot cope. Some packages being flown in have reportedly weighed more than 15 kilos. That is not a tiny little bag. It's like a big toddler. That is a serious payload. These kinds of packages have all sorts of drugs, steroids, phones, weapons, and even fast food. Imagine that. Fast food. Because apparently even prison contraband has gone full takeaway service now. And I know that sounds almost funny for a second, until you remember what else is in those packages. Phones that will allow criminal networks to continue operating. Phones that will allow intimidation, drug deals, threats to family, weapons that will increase danger and risk everyone's safety. And once the package lands, that whole landing changes like that. That is also why I need people to really understand something about staff, because that is what prison officers are walking into every single day. It's not nice, calm, controlled environment. Not just a few prisoners kicking off, it's going to be a good day in the office, it's all good. Not just a bit of, just a bit of bad behaviour, we'll manage. And then prison officers are still constantly painted as corrupt, lazy, power-hungry lowlives who don't care about the job. But yet those lowlives, as you call them, walk onto those landings. So let me ask you something. If they truly didn't care at all, would they walk onto a landing that has just received delivery full of drugs, phones, and weapons? Would you unlock that door? Would you answer that bell? Would you go into that cell? Would you be the one expected to calm it down when the dead violence and fear starts spilling out? Would you be the one dealing with the prisoner who's high, paranoid? And I want to say that clearly. Yes, there are staff who bring things in. There are staff who abuse the position. That's disgusting. But most officers are not creating that chaos. Most officers are being sent in to manage it somehow with no resources and no support. They're walking into the aftermath of everyone else exploiting the prison. And that is why this conversation is so important, and it needs to be more grown up, because prison contraband is not one route. It's not one villain, one dodgy screw, one visit, one prisoner just being clever. It's an entire ecosystem, and a very profitable one at that. And drones have only made that whole thing worse and more dangerous, because now the prison don't just have to control the gate and who goes through that gate, they also have to control what comes through from the sky, and they can't control that. And if they cannot control that, then the whole security picture is compromised completely. So when you hear about drugs in prison, don't just reduce it to, yeah, it's the screws who brought it in. When you hear about violence in prisons, don't just reduce it to, well, prisoners are just very violent. When you hear about self-harm, death, bullying, intimidation, overdoses, assaults, and chaos, don't pretend these things are separate. They are all connected. Contraband fuels the economy. The economy fuels debt. Debt fuels threats. Threats go on to violence. Fear destabilizes the wing, and destabilized wing are dangerous for prisoners, staff, civilian staff who walk onto them, families, and the public, because prisons are not meant to be controlled by organized crime. Who knew? They're meant to manage people safely. They are meant to protect you as the public. They are meant to support rehabilitation. But how do you rehabilitate someone on a wing when drugs are easier to access than proper mental health support? How do you keep someone safe when the prison cannot stop packages being flown straight to the windows? How do you ask officers to manage violence when the violence is being fueled by supply chains outside the prison walls? And how do you tell families their loved one is safe when organized crime can reach them like that, through the window, like Uber Eats? That is the real scandal here. Not just that drones exist, not that people are using them, but that the prison estate is so vulnerable that organized crime has found a way to turn the sky into a delivery route. And yes, contraband comes through staff, it comes through all sorts of people. But increasingly, it also comes through the sky, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Because you cannot fix a 2026 problem with 1800 buildings, broken windows, stretched staff, and public conversation that still thinks contraband is about one corrupt officer and a bag of drugs. And before I wrap this up, hi, my name is Dagna, and I was a prison officer in the UK for 6 years. I've stood on the inside of the system, and I have seen what the headlines miss. This is Inside Out Justice. It's where we say the quiet parts out loud.